Yeah. Yeah.
How you doing? I'm
Is
good.
it okay to have these up here? Perfect. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome you all to our Imagine No Malaria World Malaria Day media panel. My name is Rob Naylor. I'm the communications coordinator for Imagine No Malaria. And we've brought together 4 distinguished individuals who all have contributed in a variety of different ways and bring very unique perspectives to Imagine No Malaria and our journey in the fight against malaria. First, I'd like to introduce Bishop Thomas Bickerton, leader of the Western Pennsylvania Annual Conference and chair of the Global Health Initiative and the Imagine No Malaria Executive Committee. Bishop John Yambasu, leader of the Sierra Leone Annual Conference and member of the Imagine No Malaria Executive Committee. Ms. Elizabeth Clymer, who is a malaria advocate who has been with us from almost literally day one in the journey against malaria. And Mr. Michael Pajunk, who is the Partnerships Officer for the United Nations Foundation. I'd like to offer each of our panel members an opportunity to make a statement, and then we will open it up for questions from you. Go ahead, Bishop.
It's truly significant that we're here on World Malaria Day, a day when all across the world people are raising awareness of the scourge of the malaria disease that has beset so many people across our world. And we're pleased at this General Conference to be able to highlight World Malaria Day and to give significant attention to the development that's happening in our fight against malaria. 4 years ago, I had the opportunity of standing in front of the General Conference that was meeting at Fort Worth, Texas, to raise the initial awareness about malaria in this denomination. I spontaneously lifted up a $10 bill and put it on the altar table and invited people to join me on a journey of saving people's lives one bed net at a time. From that period of time, we have segued from the simple raising awareness and raising of $10 bills to a very formal campaign called Imagine No Malaria. It's often thought of as NETS Plus because we've gone far beyond just raising awareness and raising money for insecticide-treated bed nets. Our Imagine No Malaria campaign is one that focuses on education, and that is specifically through the training of community health workers on the ground to go door to door, delivering nets and information about avoiding malaria. I just got back, Michael Pajunk and I just got back from a meeting on Monday at the United Nations where Dr. Jeffrey Sachs really confirmed that the United Methodist Church is ahead of the ball game because of our work in training community health development workers. It's much more than just tossing a bed net out of the back of a pickup truck. It's about training indigenous people to go door to door to make sure that those nets are hung properly and maintained so that their complete effectiveness can be realized. Our campaign is also about communication. We're all about changing behaviors, about dispelling myths about the disease and how to identify symptoms and seek immediate treatment. And that can't be underestimated on the continent of Africa, where a lot of cultural drivers stand in the way of people utilizing mosquito nets to the full degree. Thirdly, we are about treatment, and that's improving our capacity among our 300 United Methodist hospitals and clinics throughout Africa. One of the reasons that we are a key partner in this malaria work across the world is that the church really does possess the most trusted delivery systems on the continent of Africa. It's through our hospitals and clinics that people come. They don't necessarily trust the government, nor do they trust secular businesses as much as they trust faith-based organizations who have cared for their souls on the journey and who now offer them an opportunity to live a long, healthy, sustained life. With the support of fundraisers that we've hired in our campaign, we are continuing to raise awareness and funds all across this country. an emphasis of fundraising and actual involvement of people here in the United States. And at this moment, it's a pleasure to announce to you that we have raised in excess of $20.2 million over the last 4 years for this effort. Those funds have been used to provide over 1 million insecticide-treated bed nets, to train more than 5,000 community health workers, and to establish health boards in the 12 countries where we are working, which is a key component of what we're doing. We will not go into a country that does not have the full development of a community indigenous health board that makes decisions about where our funding goes and provides the necessary monitoring so that when a donor gives a contribution, we can say with confidence we know where that money goes. All of that has provided an opportunity for us to be a participant in what we think is a pretty exciting announcement. And that announcement is that when we began this campaign, we were standing in front of groups of people saying that every 30 seconds a person dies from malaria, 1 million people a year. But it's recently been confirmed that we now are able to change our language. Today it's exciting to be able to say that every 60 seconds a person dies from malaria, and that over the last 4 years we have cut the death rate in half from 1 million people a year to 500,000. Now, that's not so much to celebrate because there's still 500,000 people a year that are dying. We still have much work to do. And there are plenty of ways in which we are praying and hoping that we will be able to continue to keep this momentum alive. Now, fortunately, all the things that I've said to you this afternoon already, you don't have to take my word for it because we've got somebody who lives and breathes among the people in Africa and is a servant of Christ in that place. And so it's my pleasure to introduce to you Bishop John Yambasu, the Episcopal leader of the Sierra Leone Annual Conference, a member of the Imagine No Malaria executive team, and I must say, from a personal standpoint, one of my dear colleagues, friends, and brothers in the journey. So Bishop Yambasu is here to share his firsthand witness of how this work has made a difference. Bishop Yambasu, I'm delighted that you're here, and thank you for all that you're doing to help our work find its flower.
Well, thank you, Bishop Bickerton, for the time and the energy and all that you continue to put into the Imagine No Malaria campaign. It's a joy for me to be part of this campaign, and I'm proud to be part of this campaign because of what I know it has done and it continues to do in Africa. The statistics that Bishop Bickerton just talked about 30 seconds, one person dies of malaria, is nothing but a fact. In Sierra Leone, where I come from as resident bishop, we live and sleep with malaria. Sometimes people ask me, how do you go about it? But for the very first time in the life of our denomination, the United Methodist Church, that we have all galvanized together to wage an all-out war on the elimination of death caused by malaria. One of the interesting things that the Imagine No Malaria initiative has done in Sierra Leone in particular is that it has helped us in the very first place to really restructure our healthcare delivery system in that country. The United Methodist Church has one of the largest number of hospitals and clinics in the country. We have 4 major hospitals and 7 other health delivery systems. But over the years, we have never really structured those hospitals in a way that they are better positioned to deliver effective health delivery system. With Imagine No Malaria, all our hospitals and clinics in the country now have organized health boards that has served in a way to really be able to make sure that the message of malaria, and not only malaria, but also other diseases, is being said across the nation. One of the interesting things that has happened over the years is, again, for the first time in the life of our church, but even more so in our nation, we partnered with other organizations, but more so with the government of Sierra Leone, to do well over 600,000 distribution of treated mosquito bed nets in the country. The advantage of that mosquito bed net distribution in the country was that for the first time, those mothers who were in those rural communities, who will go to herbalists or traditional healers when their children got sick, now know exactly where to go and where to seek treatment. Because Imagine No Malaria has introduced them to say, when your child gets sick, this is where you take your child. What has happened? As a result of that, we now have 4 times as many mothers taking their children to our hospitals and clinics now when the children get sick. And as a result of that, those children have been able to have access to treatment. But here's another interesting thing about Imagine No Malaria in Sierra Leone. While we thought we were actually addressing issues of health, it's dawned on us that as we did that, we were also addressing spiritual issues. When we did that mosquito bed net distribution in Sierra Leone, my office was stormed by tribal heads, tribal leaders from rural communities coming to me to say, Bishop, we have been so far away in those rural communities, and United Methodist Church has reached us with health delivery. We want you to do something. We now want you to go and establish United Methodist churches. 3 weeks ago, I was just from Pujan district, where as a result of that demand, the community gave us 20 acres of land for free. The paramount chief was there, and they gave us that land for free to build a clinic, to build a school, and to build a United Methodist church. And we see that if we continue with this kind of enthusiasm, if people can come on board and really contribute, we are very, very, very close to eradicating malaria by death in the very shortest possible time. So my appeal to all of you is that malaria is treatable, malaria is curable, and malaria is beatable. But we can only do that with a concerted effort of each and every one of you. Bishop Bickerton was talking about $10. In America here, that may look like small money. But in Africa, with $10, you are saving more than one child. Because in many homes, you have 2-3 children squeezing themselves under that one bed net. And so $10, just for $10, you are saving more than 2 lives. It's an invitation to all of you. We need you in Africa. We need you to come on board, and we need you to come and help us save lives and transform life in Africa.
Thank you, Bishop Yambasu. As you may get a sense, we've gotten jazzed up and excited about how on the ground in Africa we're making quite a difference. But in order to do that, this campaign has had to be a multi-tiered campaign. And that means that while we're working on delivery systems and generating enthusiasm on the continent of Africa, we have to do the very same thing right here in the United States. The United States has been the leader in contributing to the malaria cause through the President's Malaria Initiative. And with recent challenges to the United States government budget, one of the components of our work that's been very critical has been the advocacy role that we played in Washington, D.C. And one of the things that's happened in our advocacy work is that our state and local representatives have come to a better awareness of the fact that this is a campaign that really does energize their constituency base. One of the real joys that we've discovered over the last 4 years is that the key elements of this Imagine No Malaria campaign are truly exciting to the people who we work with in the various communities all across this country. We've been able to say the last 4 years that we not only know the names of the people who receive those bed nets, we know the names of the people who are giving the money that generate those bed nets. And so we've found over the last 4 years incredible stories of how our people have gotten on to this idea and have generated creative ideas to raise money and raise awareness that no executive committee board meeting could ever generate on our own. And so what I've discovered as a bishop in Western Pennsylvania is that this cause has been one of the key indicators of vitality. This General Conference is all talking about the call to action and about the measures of vitality in a local congregation. I can testify that Imagine No Malaria is one of those key indicators of vitality because it enables people to identify with a cause in which they can make an immediate difference. I'm really proud this afternoon to introduce to you a very special friend of mine, a young lady who has been a part of this incredible journey since the very beginning. She started as a Nothing But Nets champion and has grown into a wonderful Imagine No Malaria partner. She's got creativity, she is a great advocate, and as a soon-to-be graduating senior from high school, I can say to you with confidence and assurance that Elizabeth Clymer is one of the great leaders of the United Methodist Church and this Imagine No Malaria effort. And I'm pleased to share Elizabeth with you this afternoon. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you. I'd like to share how I got involved with Nothing But Nets originally. In 8th grade for a civics project, we were assigned a project that we had to find a problem in the world to fix. And I ended up choosing malaria. And after I learned of the United Methodist Church's involvement, and not just involvement, but leadership in this whole movement, I really felt compelled as a person and a kid, but also as United Methodist, to get involved in this fight against malaria with Nothing But Nets. So I proposed the idea to my youth group, and in the end, we developed the SWAT team, which is a congregation-wide but youth-led campaign that holds monthly Salvation Army-style collections of spare change. And the SWAT team has had great charisma, and it's involved all ages, from the 3-year-olds to grandparents, because everyone can collect change. And it's been really exciting to see how the energy spreads across all ages and how everyone can really make a difference, which is what is part of being Methodist is so important. We're lifesavers, and that's what we do. And so far, we seem to do a pretty good job at it since we've cut malaria deaths in half, but we still have a long ways to go, of course. So the SWAT team took off really well, but then I'm a swimmer, and I wanted to combine two passions of mine, so I combined malaria prevention and swimming, and I developed a toolkit to facilitate swimathons for local summer leagues. And we've done that the past couple summers, and that's been great success, and we're looking forward to continue that this summer. So that's all started with Nothing But Nets, but then in 2010, I had the opportunity to attend the launch of Imagine No Malaria in Austin, Texas. And there it was absolutely wonderful to see there were thousands of people there that day, and to see all the energy buzzing around just for one cause, and to see all United Methodists come together, and we're leading the world in a fight that saves lives. It's very empowering, and it was very encouraging and inspiring to continue further and progress those efforts. So as Imagine No Malaria has taken off, we still continue our method of prevention through sending bed nets, with Nothing But Nets. But we've also taken an important step, which is advocacy. And I live in Washington, D.C., so I've been fortunate enough to take part in a lot of the advocacy on the Hill. Last month, I joined 50 other college students from around the nation, and we went through a couple days of training and briefing, and in preparation for visits to our members of Congress in their offices on the Hill, and asking them to support the continuation of federal funding for global health, which is critical in the fight against malaria. And fortunately, those efforts were successful. We got federal, the budget was included global health this year, and but we have to continue those efforts and continue fighting that. So we are continuing to ask people. That's why we have our texting campaign to. We're asking people to text in to SWAT We're texting SWAT to 27722 to sign the petition to continue the federal funding for global health. And it's really made me proud to be United Methodist, because our efforts are proven very successful. We're continuing to make progress, and I look forward to the progress we continue to make. So, Bishop Bickerton.
Thanks, Elizabeth. I'm so glad you're here. When we first started this campaign 4 years ago, there were some misunderstandings among United Methodist people. One of the comments that I received most frequently was, "I'm so glad that the United Methodist Church is going to eliminate malaria." Well, the United Methodist Church is not going to eliminate malaria. We are only one of many partners all across the globe who are collaborating together in what is a very unique opportunity for us to cross the boundaries between sacred and secular to get the job done, and the job is eliminating malaria-related deaths. It truly takes a global village to get this job done. We are blessed to have some amazing partners that we've worked with over the last 4 years. We regularly work with people like UNICEF, the International Red Cross, the Red Crescent Society. We work with the Global AIDS, the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. But it's really through one particular partner that we've been able to really find our full flower, and that's through the United Nations Foundation. 4 years ago, I was privileged to stand on the stage with Bill Gates Sr. as a part of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. That's only made possible through the work of the United Nations Foundation, who is one of our big supporters and partners in this journey. Joining us today to give us some perspective to the scope and importance of these global partners is Mr. Michael Pajong, who is a partnership director for the United Nations Foundation, and again, a close personal friend and colleague on this journey as we strive to pull together people from all sectors to get this job done. Michael?
Thank you, Bishop. The United Nations Foundation is really privileged and honored to partner with the United Methodist Church around Imagine No Malaria. We use the word partnership a lot in talking about relations between organizations and people to get things done, but it's not a cliche. Partners are the only way that a global health issue like malaria is going to be addressed. There is a United Nations World Health Organization goal of eliminating malaria deaths by the year 2015. And the only way that's going to be accomplished is by a number of players on the world stage being active, moving forward, raising money, implementing programs in the field, and engaging in advocacy with their local governments. One of the key components of that partnership group are faith-based organizations, and as best exemplified by the United Methodist Church. The church in rural Africa is in places where ministries of health and other non-governmental organizations will never go. It's at the end of the road and beyond the end of the road. And the health care and education services that the United Methodist Church offers to people in rural Africa will only be offered by the church and not by anyone else. Because the United Methodist Church is so well positioned to not only raise money for the global effort to eliminate malaria deaths, but also to deliver services where no one else will, makes them a truly unique organization and a unique partner for the United Nations Foundation. We're pleased to work with the United Methodist Church and have since the Nothing But Nets campaign, when the United Methodist Church was a founding partner of Nothing But Nets, and that's continued through the Imagine No Malaria campaign for the fundraising, advocacy, and program implementation in Africa that we've been talking about. It's truly a global effort. It's a big stage that needs many players to fill that stage to deliver the end product, which, as I said, is eliminating malaria deaths by 2015. It won't be done unless all of those partners are active, and one of those key partners, one of the most welcome partners, and one of the most critical partners to the success of that goal is the United Methodist Church and the Imagine No Malaria campaign.
Thanks, Michael. Earlier this morning during the laity address, we heard one of the laypersons remind us that 4 years ago, the United Methodist Church added a key phrase to its mission statement. Our mission is to make disciples of Jesus Christ for the transformation of the world. We've shared a lot of information with you this afternoon, but I would end this period of comments from this panel by saying that we believe that we are a part of an effort that is truly transforming the world. We are changing the world one bed net, one family, one life at a time. And we believe it's one of the reasons why so many people have become so actively engaged in this campaign, because they can actually see and feel that a difference is being made. We are literally changing the world through this work, and it is such a blessing to be a part of it. I never would have imagined in my own life having been given the opportunity to be a part of such a meaningful effort on behalf of the church that I love. We're not done yet. There are some challenging roads ahead to continue to raise awareness, to raise dollars, and to implement those dollars in the right way. But there are exciting opportunities ahead, because we believe that there is a day where we truly can imagine no malaria. And we do that not only because of the work that we do as human beings, but as we have quoted so often in our work, to quote Scripture, we believe that God is able to accomplish abundantly far more than any of us can ever conceive of or imagine. It's with that reminder and that faith base that we with a great deal of excitement move forward into the future to eliminate malaria-related deaths across the world. Be happy to entertain any questions that you might have for any members of our panel this afternoon.
Linda Worthington from Baltimore, Washington Conference.
Hi, Linda.
Hi. I've run into people that don't live in Africa who also ask, is there any possibility that Imagine No Malaria will come to our countries, particularly in Latin America?
It is such a massive problem across the world, and our global partners are involved in other places. And we hear about that when we go to various briefings, such as the ones we were just at the United Nations. Our focus has been on Africa because that's where our delivery system is most concentrated, and we decided as a denomination that that was our beginning point. The Global Health Initiative has several points that we need to be emphasizing. We, 4 years ago, sought the advice of our African bishops in asking them, if we were to deal with global health in your country, where would you advise us to begin? They immediately said, begin with malaria, because everything else won't have any meaning unless you can get a child past age 5. So we're concentrating on Africa at this point because that's where our delivery systems are most substantial, but we're not limited to that at all. It's just taking one step at a time to get to the desired outcome. And Bishop Yambasu, you may want to comment on that, on why malaria was the emphasis that the African bishops placed.
Well, there are so many issues, when you talk about Africa, especially health-related issues. Today we're talking about AIDS, we're talking about malaria, we're talking about typhoid, we're talking about, a whole lot of issues. But when you put all of this together, you find out that malaria is the largest single killer of people. And not only people, but children and pregnant women. And what does that do? It undercuts the potential of that nation, because these children are the potential leaders of the nation. And where they continue to die, then the country has nothing else to do in terms of really having children to take after them. We have referred to malaria as a weapon of mass destruction. Malaria kills more than any other disease, more than AIDS. And the difference between malaria, the effect of malaria and AIDS is that with AIDS, there is enough time for people to come in and help. AIDS can take you 4, 5, 6, 7 years, 10 years, and with the intervention, you can still live beyond that. But because malaria actually targets children, and what it does is to reduce their immunity, so that the slightest cold they encounter, they are gone. The second thing is why we decided to emphasize on malaria is that it also does a whole lot of difference in the life of women in Africa. So malaria is a women-related issue because women carry the burden of caring for their children. And when the child is sick, the woman who works on the farm can no longer go into the farm and work, and so the harvest is not there, and at the end of the day, there is nothing to support the home. And that was why we sat and said, if there is any intentional, approach to address any health-related issue, it must be malaria. And I tell you, we are really beginning to reap the harvest. There is so much that is going on now in Africa that lives are really being transformed. And you want to go to some of those places. We are presently, after that 6,000, mosquito bed net distribution, we have now engaged in a massive evaluation. And you go to some of these communities, you want to see how mothers, when I visit a few of those communities, mothers come, they are dancing, they are beating their traditional instrument to say, Bishop, we thank you. And sometimes I'll tell them, it's not this bishop. Say thank you to God and thank you to United Methodists, because they are the one that are really making that happen.
Linda, I would specifically answer your question in an additional way. It really, to be as transparent as possible, boils down to money and strategy. The money piece is that we've raised $20.2 million, but that's just scratching the surface of what the capacity is within the United Methodist Church. Our people, my former bishop, Bishop William Boyd Grove, who's now my colleague, used to say when I was a pastor to us at annual conference, our churches don't have any money, but our people do. And when people are engaged with meaningful causes, they contribute. The reality is $20.2 million is a lot of money, but on a global scale, it's not much at all. And if we were to divide the pie in so many different places, our strategy could not be enabled. And the strategy, as Bishop Yambasu has alluded to, is to do concentrated net distributions, because a mosquito is not confined to a village. And so we do countrywide distributions and then begin to monitor the impact. I can say to you that reports from Tanzania, for example, after their countrywide distribution, is that they report a 62% reduction in the number of malaria-related illnesses because of a concentrated approach to delivery systems, to delivering of those nets and the monitoring of them. So it's a matter of having a pie with a certain amount of opportunity to slice it. And when you slice it so thin, you can't make that big of an impact. But when you cut a bigger slice and do an emphasis in a concentrated area, we're seeing tremendous results in terms of the drop of malaria-related illness and death. Others?
I just have to say, Bishop Thomas, I remember being at that conference when people were throwing $10 bills at you. That was pretty exciting.
It was.
My question was on the healthcare delivery system. On the treatable aspect of malaria, is there medication available for that to be treated? Or is it costly?
Bishop Yamasu, you want to address that? Treatment facilities?
Well, that's all the reason why we are so intentional and serious about this campaign. A dose for malaria treatment is anything between $4-5. But even at that, for the people in those rural communities to have access to the hospital to be able to diagnose, sometimes they go to walk 20-30 miles. And so what this program really does is that it goes into those villages to meet the people. And what we have done in that case is, in the very first place, to make sure that we improve our health delivery system so that it becomes a complement to the bed net distribution. Because Africans are generally nocturnal people. We spend the rest of our day, the rest of our time in the evening telling stories, sitting in the porch, over the fireside, telling stories to the children, and that's when mosquitoes are alive. So it's pretty expensive. It's really pretty expensive. We say $5 for a dose of malaria treatment. You want to know how much people are earning in a nation where the average daily wage is nothing but about $1 to $2. So that's how serious it is. That's how really serious it is.
Hence the reason why our fundraising campaign in the United States is so very critical.
Mr. Pojunk, I'd like to ask a question about productivity measurements. You've talked about mortality measurements, and that sounds wonderful if you've cut mortality from 30 to 60. That's amazing. What about the productivity? In 2001, I was in Sierra Leone, and I stayed with a woman named Eleanor Novel. And during the week we were there, she was a teacher, she was an active member of the community, but during the week we were there were days that she couldn't even get out of bed and it was malaria. She was very forthright in sharing with us that she had malaria, and most of her household had malaria. And so my concern is not just with stopping it to begin with, but with treating it and improving the productivity of every nation in Africa, because without workers who can consistently work, they're going to be behind in their economies all the time.
Well, you're absolutely right. There's a tremendous economic impact of malaria in Africa and other malaria endemic areas. As Bishop Yambasu mentioned just a few minutes ago, when young children in a family are sick with malaria, the mother can't do her other duties because she's busy tending to her children. Malaria strikes hardest at under 5s and pregnant women because in the case of pregnant women, their immune systems are compromised because they are carrying a child. For children under 5, their immune systems have not yet fully developed, so they're not in a position to fight off malaria as an adult would. And of course, in many areas, those children are not as well nourished as perhaps some children in the developed world are. But even for those adults who have made it past childhood and get malaria, it may not be as fatal as it is for children, but it does take them out of the workplace, it takes them out of the field. For older children, it takes them out of the classroom. So it's important, if they do get sick, to get them diagnosed properly. In other words, if they do have malaria, to get a correct diagnosis that it is malaria, and to get the medications to them quickly so that they will recover quickly and get back to the business of tending to their fields, to being in school, to working at their job, and to running the household.
Are you measuring?
Yes, we are, and there are measurements, and I can get you those specific figures in terms of the economic impacts and what it means when you cut down morbidity and mortality.
Hello, I'm Linda Unger from UMCOR, and Bishop Bickerton, I just wondered if you could speak a little bit more about, you had mentioned some of the holistic parts of the approach to fighting malaria, including the training of health boards and the bed net distributions. What is it that will make the gains that have been accomplished sustainable over time?
That's a very good question, and I guess I would preface my answer by saying that we're dealing with a disease that has a tremendous ability to reoccur if we don't stay focused. The sustainability of a mosquito, even though the lifespan of one little mosquito isn't long, this disease reoccurs quickly if we don't continue to hammer away at it, beat it into submission, if you will. And so this holistic approach is absolutely critical for our ability to stamp this thing out. Now, that holistic approach would not be possible, as you well know, if it wasn't for our friends at UMCOR, who are great partners with us. And Shannon Trilley's just come in, and she's one of the kingpins of that whole endeavor. But it is important for us to realize that it's not just about distributing a bed net. We've done that, been there, done that. It didn't work. To toss them from the back of a pickup truck means that many folks were using that as a fish seine. We heard stories even of someone using it as a wedding veil. We found out culturally at times that folks weren't using it because they equated it with a funeral pall. And so the one-on-one engagement with community health workers is absolutely critical. I was at a training session in Sierra Leone where Beatrice Kabanga was training folks on how to go into these communities and the accountability that was associated with that. It used to be that we handed those mosquito nets out just randomly. Now, in the training, they open the bags before they're ever distributed, because that eliminates the possibility of the recipient turning around and selling that mosquito net. And so the bags are ripped open immediately. The monitoring after the distribution takes place is absolutely critical. And I heard mentioned earlier that Michael and I heard from Dr. Jeffrey Sachs on Monday, who was confirming that reality, that if we're really going to beat this disease, it is about holistic treatment. And that is the training of community health workers, the strengthening of clinics. And that's where United Methodism shines, because we're not only a people who believe in personal holiness, we believe in social holiness. And that social holiness has resulted in 160 years worth of construction and emphasis of clinics in Africa. We're now in the process of strengthening those clinics through the Imagine No Malaria campaign, and the training of these health boards and community health workers is critical. It's also very important for us to say right up front that in our history, confessionally speaking, we have been a very U.S.-driven, parochial mindset in terms of our mission. There's been a period of time in the United Methodist Church's history where we would say, to paraphrase, let's go over there and help those folks by doing it for them. The development of community health boards is a completely different approach to mission in the 21st century. And that is to say that sitting to my left is a colleague of mine who is called and gifted of God. He serves people who are off the chart in terms of their abilities to live out their faith. And our work to train and equip indigenous leaders to make decisions about the projects that need to be funded, to provide the accountability networks so that those projects can find their full flower, is absolutely the way for us to live out our faith in the 21st century. It is no longer a parochially driven process, although we see hints of it all the time, and we have to combat that at times as much as we have to combat the disease. But we're committed to that, and our stance on that has been very firm, that we will not send our funding to places where we can't develop those kind of delivery systems and accountability systems on the ground.
Excellent. And with that, we are kind of over our time allotment, but certainly if you all have additional questions, we can set up individual interviews or certainly ask any of the staff, and we'll be happy to assist you with those answers. But thanks again for being part of this media panel, and we appreciate your time and effort.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.